Welcome back to another episode of Warren Cali. In this episode, I will detail the story of one of Los Angeles' biggest drug dealers. Tommy Whitmore, also known as Little Tommy, was born around 1964 and will grow up in South Central Los Angeles. Tommy's interest early in life was riding bikes and hanging out in his neighborhood. He would grow up in a single-parent home, being a man in the house at an early age. By 9 years old, his mom gave him that label, and it instantly made him want to help provide for his family. At just 9, Tommy had drive and hustle, and started acquiring small jobs around his neighborhood. He grew up in two dangerous areas in South Central, in which the areas would become gangs turf, ran by the 7-4 and the A-Tray Hoovers. He looked up to the older guys in that area, and he would do store runs and wash their cars for money. Tommy wanted to make things easy on his mom and his little sister, so whatever he made, he put back into his house. He worked so hard at an early age, his mom never had to worry about buying him anything. He was working 2 jobs just at the age of 13, and that led on for several years. He even had his first car at 14. By 1979, the whole Los Angeles was taking a dramatic shift. Crips and Bloods and SA gangs spread all over LA County, prompting hundreds of gangs and thousands of gang members to take over the streets by force. But Tommy tried to stay away from that life. He stayed working and even graduated high school at 18. But the pressures of the real world began to set in. Tommy was struggling. Even though he worked multiple jobs, he was a new father, and he needed more money to take care of his family. Tommy was 18 around 1982. One day his cousin introduced him to cooking dope and what dope was. His cousin told him to cook up for her one day, and he would receive $100. That was a lot of money at that time. More money in an hour than Tommy would receive in a week, and at that point, he thought he needed a career change. As early as 1981, reports of crack were appearing in Los Angeles, Oakland, Chicago, New York, Miami, Houston, and every major city in America. Tommy became fully locked in and selling drugs. He got his own place to set up shop in the A-Tray Hoover's turf in a duplex that he turned into a crack house, which he lived in and sold drugs out of for several years. His plug was another well-known South Central drug dealer from the same area, being Freeway Rick, and just like Freeway, Tommy began to make tons of money. 2 years living in those duplexes, Tommy is stated to have made up to $7 million, a millionaire just by 20 years old. Crack was almost an unknown drug up until 1985, so Tommy's run-ins with the police in those 2 years left him not being arrested. Tommy was collecting 5 keys a week. The money was coming in fast, too fast for Tommy to spend it. At this point, going into the mid-80s, everyone was selling crack or doing it. Many guys who was gangbanging was also now selling drugs, and a bunch of families were broken apart by the drug. But for Tommy, this meant more money and more employees. Tommy started to live a lavish life in his early 20s, having things he never could imagine. He started having luxury cars, from Corvettes, Porsches, Rolls Royces, and also Lamborghinis. Tommy owned several properties. He had personally built mansions in Orange County and had several rental properties all throughout Los Angeles, even penthouses on Wilshire Boulevard. Tommy later became bigger in the drug game. He didn't have to go through middlemen. He got a direct connect and became a supplier in Los Angeles just like Freeway Rick. Tommy was on another level. He had everything money could buy. He had homes, cars, women, and his family and friends had everything they could ask for. But all good things don't last forever. By 1985, LA County introduced the Battle Ram, a 6-ton armored vehicle equipped with a 14 steel battering ram that was used in LAPD raids to shut down several suspected drug houses. And this method shut down many crack houses and sent many drug dealers to jail. In 1986, the US Congress passed a law that created a 100-to-1 sentencing disparity for possession of trafficking of crack, but compared to penalties for powder cocaine, widely criticized by discrimination against African Americans and other racial minorities who were more likely to use or sell powder cocaine. This 100-to-1 ratio was mandated by the federal law in 1986. For example, people convicted in federal court of possession of 5 grams of crack cocaine received a minimum mandatory sentence of 5 years in federal prison. On the other hand, possession of 500 grams of powder cocaine carried the same sentence.
Tonight, I can report to you that we've made much progress. 37 federal agencies are working together in a vigorous national effort. And by next year, our spending for drug law enforcement will have more than tripled from its 1981 levels. We have increased seizures of illegal drugs. Shortages of marijuana are now being reported. Last year alone, over 10,000 drug criminals were convicted, and nearly $250 million of their assets were seized by the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration.
Tommy was seeing all this in real time, and he wanted to lead a game, but he was in too deep. Family and friends needed him, so this kept him in the streets because he felt like he had no escape. In 1988, a 2-year investigation began when Tommy was stopped for speeding. This prompted authorities to launch an undercover operation that eventually led to what occurred later. On August 18, 1990, Tommy's world would come crashing down. His whole operation was took down. The LAPD acted as the lead agency in this case. Other agencies involved in the seizure were the FBI, the Santa Ana Police, the Orange County Sheriff's Department, and the Orange County Regional Narcotics Suppression Program. Later in the day, another drug task force led by the Federal Drug Enforcement Administration and the Inglewood Police Department held a news conference to announce the arrest of suspected, leader being Tommy, and 15 suspected members of the drug trafficking ring that allegedly distributed more than 2,000 pounds of cocaine a month. Among those arrested was Tommy's mom. According to the DEA, Tommy's operation supplied cocaine smuggled through Mexico from Colombia to 4 street gangs in Los Angeles and to cities nationwide, from Detroit to Oklahoma City to New York, New Jersey, and also to Philly. This was called one of the biggest drug busts in LA history.
A major corporation is what some call Little Tommy Whitmore, who is being held on drug charges. At 23, his holdings include 2 mansions and a stable of at least 14 vehicles and racing cars. Drugs and money, a corrupting influence.
How do you tell a kid who's selling dope and making $1,000 a week that that's a bad thing to do and he ought to go work at Jack in the Box for 4.5 an hour?
Tommy and his 15 co-defendants were charged in a 44-count indictment with numerous drug-related offenses. The government's theory of the case placed Tommy at the center of the ongoing narcotics conspiracy, which began in early 1986 and continued until Tommy's arrest in August of 1990. A jury found Tommy guilty of 16 counts. Tommy received multiple life sentences and did 27 years in prison and didn't get out until 2017. After being released, Tommy went back into his hard-working demeanor. He started attending seminars and workshops to learn several avenues to go legit, and even started truck driving. He's still well and thriving after all these years spent away. This will conclude this episode. If you haven't already, check out my previous episodes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.